My dead mom was leaving me notes, so I installed cameras. My mother has been dead for 3 years. So when I found a note in her handwriting on my bathroom mirror this morning, I had 2 choices: accept that I'm being haunted or accept that I'm losing my mind. I threw it away and picked option 3, pretend it never happened. That lasted about 6 hours. I found the first note on a Tuesday. That's important, actually. The fact that I remember the day. Because for the last 3 years, the days have kind of blurred together into this beige smear of fine. Wake up. Coffee, laptop. Pretend I'm a functional human being who definitely isn't living in her dead mother's house like some kind of grief-stricken squatter. Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. This isn't a ghost story. Or maybe it is. I still don't know. But if you're the kind of person who needs everything tied up in a neat bow with a clear answer, this might not be for you. If you're still here, subscribe. Because the stories on this channel don't do easy answers. They do truth, and truth is messy. But Tuesday, I remember Tuesday. I was brushing my teeth, the same mechanical routine I've done 10,000 times in this bathroom, when I saw it. A yellow Post-it note stuck to the corner of the mirror right at eye level. "Don't forget to drink water, sweetheart. Mom." My hand stopped mid-brush. Toothpaste foam dripping into the sink. I just stared. The handwriting was hers. That looping, over-enthusiastic cursive she used on everything. Birthday cards, grocery lists, those little notes she'd leave around the house when I was younger, before I moved out, before everything turned bad. "Good luck on your test. You're going to do amazing today." The kind of thing that embarrassed teenage me and that adult me would give anything to see one more time. Except I was seeing it. Right now. I set down my toothbrush with a hand that was, I noticed, trembling slightly, which was stupid. It was just a Post-it note. Probably been stuck behind the mirror frame for years, finally worked its way loose. Old adhesive, gravity, basic physics. I peeled it off carefully like it might disintegrate if I breathed wrong. The paper was not yellowed, not faded. The adhesive on the back was still tacky. And the ink, I held it closer to my face, feeling ridiculous. The ink looked fresh. Not that I'm a forensic expert or anything, but I've seen old Post-its. The ones that have been sitting in a drawer for a decade. They don't look like this. This looked like someone had written it yesterday. My mother died 3 years ago. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, if we're counting. Which I wasn't. Because that would be pathological, and I've done enough therapy to know that tracking the exact number of days since your mother's death is a red flag the size of a circus tent. I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face I've had for 32 years. Same dark circles. I've been photoshopping out of my Zoom calls. Same I'm fine expression I've perfected to an art form. "It's old," I said out loud to my reflection. "It's been here the whole time. You just never noticed it." My reflection didn't look convinced. Here's the thing about losing someone to Alzheimer's. You lose them twice. Once when they stop recognizing you, and once when they actually die. And the second loss, it's almost a relief. Which is a thought I've never said out loud, not even to my therapist, because what kind of monster feels relieved when their mother dies? But I did. I felt relief. The last 2 years of her life were a horror show. She'd look at me like I was a stranger, sometimes worse, like I was a threat. She said things, cruel things, things that weren't her but came out of her mouth anyway. Called me selfish, ungrateful, asked why I kept coming around when I clearly didn't care about her. I knew it was the disease. I knew that. But knowing something and feeling something are 2 different countries, and I never figured out how to get from one to the other. So when she finally died, peacefully in her sleep, which felt like a cosmic joke after everything, I felt this wave of lightness, like I could finally breathe. And then immediately I felt like a monster for feeling that way, which is how I felt pretty much every day since. I stood there holding the Post-it note for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. "Don't forget to drink water, sweetheart." She used to say that all the time. I'd be hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table designing logos for tech startups run by men who thought creative meant willing to work for exposure, and she'd appear with a glass of water and that exact phrase. "Don't forget to drink water, sweetheart." My throat felt tight. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I rinsed my mouth, spit, and walked out of the bathroom without looking back at the mirror. It was old. Had to be. Maybe it had been stuck in a drawer that I'd opened recently, and some draft had carried it out, and it had landed perfectly on the bathroom mirror where I'd see it first thing in the morning. That's a thing that could happen. Air currents, chaos theory, butterflies flapping their wings in China or whatever. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. 14 emails. A client wanted revisions on a logo I'd already revised 6 times. Another client was 3 weeks late on payment. Normal Tuesday stuff. I didn't think about the note. I didn't think about my mother's handwriting, or the fact that the ink looked fresh, or the fact that she'd been dead for 3 years and 2 months and 16 days. I didn't think about any of it. I told myself it was old. I needed it to be old, because the alternative meant I was either losing my mind or something impossible was happening, and I've spent 3 years keeping it together. 3 years being fine. 3 years living in this house surrounded by her things, her furniture, her life, and not falling apart. I wasn't about to start now over a Post-it note. I deleted the photo I'd taken of it before throwing it away. Then I opened Photoshop and got back to work. The second note appeared 5 days later on the fridge. I'd gone to grab the oat milk for my 3rd coffee of the day, because apparently I'd decided to survive entirely on caffeine and the dried-out half of a bagel I found in the back of the pantry when I saw it. Yellow Post-it. Same handwriting. "Eat something real today, Mom." My hand froze on the fridge handle. This one I couldn't rationalize. There was no stuck-behind-the-mirror frame explanation. No convenient draft that could have carried it from some forgotten drawer. This was on the fridge, front and center, where it definitely, absolutely had not been 20 minutes ago when I'd gotten my first coffee. I pulled out my phone and took a picture before I could second-guess myself. Then I checked every lock in the house. Front door, back door, the window in the kitchen that sticks and I never open. The basement door that I keep locked because I haven't been down there since Mom died, and I'm not about to start now. Everything was locked. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. I had yogurt. Then I took another photo of the note and added it to a folder on my phone I titled Evidence, because apparently I was doing this now. The 3rd note was in my laptop bag. I found it on a Wednesday, 11 days after the first one, tucked between my notebook and my tablet. I'd reached in to grab my charger during a Zoom call and my fingers brushed paper. "You're doing better than you think. Mom." I muted myself mid-sentence, stared at the note. My client was still talking, their tiny Zoom square flapping with words I couldn't hear over the sound of my own heartbeat. This note knew things, because I wasn't doing better. I was barely holding it together. I'd been sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, checking the locks every hour, waking up at every creak and settling of this old house. I'd been performing, doing better, smiling at the camera, meeting deadlines, saying, "I'm good, thanks," when Jenna texted to check in. But I wasn't good, and someone knew that. I took the photo, added it to the folder, unmuted and told the client the design looked great and I'd send over final files by Friday. By week 2, I'd found 6 notes. On my nightstand, "I'm proud of you, Mom." On the bathroom counter, "Remember to be gentle with yourself, Mom." Tucked in the book I was reading, "You've always been so strong, Mom." Each one in her handwriting, each one saying something she used to say back when she was still her, before the disease hollowed her out and filled the space with someone I didn't recognize. They were kind. That's what made them unbearable. If they'd been threatening, "I'm watching you," or "You can't hide," I would have called the police. I would have told Jenna. I would have done something other than what I was actually doing, which was documenting them in secret and checking my phone throughout the day to see if a new one had appeared. But they weren't threats. They were comfort, and I was starving for that. I started noticing patterns. The notes appeared when I needed them most, after a bad client call, on mornings when I couldn't drag myself out of bed. The night I'd seriously considered just driving. Nowhere specific, just away from this house, this life, this frozen version of myself I'd become. That night, there was a note on my pillow. "You're exactly where you need to be, Mom." I sat on the edge of the bed and cried for the first time in 8 months. I knew I should tell someone. Jenna, the police, my therapist, who I'd stopped seeing 6 months ago because I'd convinced myself I was managing fine. But how do you explain this? Hi, yes, I'm being haunted by affirmations from my dead mother. No, I'm not scared. That's the problem. I think I'm enjoying it. I checked the locks 17 times that night. I'd started counting. Another thing my therapist would have had thoughts about. The next morning, I woke up and immediately looked for a note. Nothing on the nightstand, nothing on the bathroom mirror, nothing in the kitchen. I felt disappointed. And that's when I knew. I wasn't afraid someone was breaking into my house. I was afraid they'd stop. I started waiting for them, anticipating them, hoping for them in a way that made my skin crawl even as I couldn't stop myself. Because for 3 years I'd lived in this house alone, surrounded by her things but not her. And now someone, was giving me little pieces of her back, even if it meant I was losing my mind, even if it meant something worse. I started waiting for them, and that's when I knew something was wrong with me. Jenna showed up Friday night with 2 bottles of wine and a container of expensive cheese that she definitely couldn't afford on a teacher's salary. "It's Brie," she announced, like she was presenting the crown jewels. "The good kind. We're being fancy tonight because you've been a hermit and I miss your face." I'd almost canceled. 3 times. But Jenna was the only person who still checked in, still tried, still acted like I was someone worth showing up for. So I let her in and pretended I wasn't constantly glancing around my own living room looking for yellow squares of paper. We made it through half a bottle before she asked how I was really doing. "Fine," I said automatically. Then, because the wine was working and I was so tired of being alone with this, "Actually, I've been finding these old notes. From my mom." Jenna's whole face lit up. "Oh my God, Claire, that's so sweet." "Yeah, they're just little Post-its. Things she used to write, drink water and stuff like that." "That's exactly the kind of thing you should keep," Jenna said, leaning forward. "I know it's hard, but those little reminders of who she was before—" "The thing is," I interrupted, "I don't think they're old." Jenna's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the ink looks fresh. They keep appearing in different places, like new places, places I would have noticed." There was a pause. The kind where you can hear someone mentally shifting gears, recalibrating how to handle you. "Okay," Jenna said slowly. "So you're finding notes. Around the house. Your mom's house where she lived for 30 years and probably stuck Post-its on every available surface. I know how it sounds. Claire." She reached across and took my hand. "You've been under a lot of stress. You're living alone in this house, working from home, barely sleeping." "I'm sleeping fine." "You just downed your 3rd glass of wine in 20 minutes. I pulled my hand back. "I'm not making this up." "I'm not saying you are, but—" Jenna chose her words carefully. "Remember what your therapist said about the dissociative episodes?" My stomach dropped. "That was years ago, when things were bad with Mom. You were losing time, Claire. Whole hours you couldn't account for, and you were under extreme stress. Which you are again, and She stopped, clearly seeing something in my face. "Have you been back to therapy?" "I don't need therapy. I need someone to believe me that these notes are new." Okay. Jenna held up her hands. "Show me." I stared at her. "Show you what?" "The notes. You said you've been finding them. Do you still have them?" I did. All of them. In a shoebox under my bed like some kind of evidence locker. But suddenly the idea of showing Jenna felt wrong. Like I'd be betraying something. Someone. "I threw most of them away," I lied. Then, "Claire, I don't know what you want me to say. You're living in your mother's house, finding notes in your mother's handwriting, and you can't show them to me. Can you understand why I'm worried?" "You think I'm writing them myself. I think you're grieving. I think you're isolated. And I think maybe your brain is trying to give you something you desperately need. I stood up. I should probably call it a night. I have a deadline tomorrow. Jenna looked hurt but didn't argue. She gathered her coat, her purse, the brie we'd barely touched. At the door, she turned back. I love you, she said, and I'm here whenever you're ready to really talk about anything, okay? I nodded, locked the door behind her, checked it twice. Then I walked back to the living room. The note was on the coffee table, right where Jenna's wine glass had been. She doesn't understand, but I do. Mom. If you're already thinking about who you'd call in this situation, or worse, if you're realizing you wouldn't call anyone because they'd think you were crazy, hit subscribe, because you get it. You understand what it's like to be alone with something impossible. I picked it up with shaking hands, looked around, the empty room like I might catch someone in the act. But there was no one, just me and the furniture and the ghost of my mother's handwriting. The note felt different this time, not comforting, conspiratorial. Like whoever was writing them had been listening, had heard Jenna pathologize me, dismiss me, reduce me to a diagnosis, and was taking my side. I sat down on the couch, stared at the note. She doesn't understand, I said out loud to the empty room. My voice sounded strange, small. But you do. Nothing answered. I waited anyway, because the notes had started responding to my life, to my conversations, to my needs. And I'd started talking back, which meant either I was having a psychotic break or something in this house was paying very close attention. I wasn't sure which option scared me more, or which one I was hoping for. I installed the cameras on a Monday, 2-day shipping, 4 interior cameras, 1 video doorbell, the kind with night vision and motion detection and a smartphone app that promised to make me feel safe and connected in my own home. The irony wasn't lost on me. The doorbell went up first. I watched 3 YouTube tutorials and only had one minor meltdown when I nearly drilled through a wire. The interior cameras were easier, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway outside my bedroom, and one after 20 minutes of internal debate in my bedroom itself. Because if someone was coming into my room while I slept, leaving notes on my nightstand, my pillow, I needed to know, even if that someone was me. I downloaded the app, set up the alerts, tested each camera twice. The little green lights blinked back at me like eyes, and I felt simultaneously safer and more exposed than I had in weeks. Okay, I said to the empty house, let's see what you've got. For 3 days, nothing happened. No notes, no mysterious appearances, just me, moving through my own house like a prisoner under surveillance, hyper-aware of every camera angle. I reviewed footage obsessively, hours of me working at my desk, making coffee, staring at my phone. I watched myself check the locks at 11 p.m., then again at midnight, then again at 1 a.m. On camera, I looked exactly like what Jenna thought I was, unraveling. By day 4, I'd almost convinced myself the cameras had solved it, that whoever or whatever was leaving the notes had been scared off by the threat of being recorded. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt abandoned. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to my phone buzzing. Motion detected in bedroom. My heart lurched. I grabbed my phone, fumbling in the dark, nearly dropping it, pulled up the app with shaking hands. The live feed showed my bedroom, dark except for the streetlight glow through the curtains. I could see the corner of my bed, the nightstand, the dresser. Nothing moved. False alarm, I whispered. Just a glitch or something. Then I saw it, on my pillow, right next to where my head had been 30 seconds. And a yellow Post-it note. I stopped breathing. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head to look at the pillow beside me. The note was there, real, physical, 6 inches from my face. You're safe. I'm watching over you. Mom. I launched myself out of bed, hit the light switch, and stood there in the harsh overhead glare, staring at the note like it might attack me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I opened the app, went to recorded footage, found the bedroom camera, rewound, 3 hours of nothing, just me sleeping, barely moving, the occasional shift of blankets, Then at 2:47 a.m., the screen went black. Not dark, black. Complete signal loss. I watched the timestamp tick forward. 2:48, 2:49, 2:50. At 2:51 a.m., the feed came back. The note was on my pillow. I replayed it. Again. The glitch was exactly 4 minutes long. 4 minutes of complete darkness. And when the camera came back, the note was just there. Like it had materialized out of nothing. I checked the other cameras. Living room, kitchen, hallway, all recorded straight through 2:47 to 2:51. No interruptions, no glitches, just the bedroom camera. Then I checked the doorbell. I scrolled through hours of footage. The street was empty. A car passed at 1:32 a.m. Someone walked their dog at 6:15 p.m. No one approached my door. No one entered. No one left. I sat on the edge of my bed as the sun came up, watching the footage loop over and over. The black screen, the note appearing, the impossible arithmetic of it. Either someone had hacked my cameras, knew exactly which one to disable and for how long, or I was documenting my own delusion in real time, or something else. Something I didn't have words for. I didn't sleep the next night, or the one after that. I sat up in bed, watching the live camera feed on my phone, daring something to happen. The knife from my kitchen block was under my pillow. I checked the locks 14 times, checked the camera angles, checked the doorbell feed for the 100th time, looking for something I'd missed. Nothing. The notes stopped coming. By the third night, I was exhausted enough that my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd had 4 cups of coffee and felt like my heart was trying to escape my chest. I'd snapped at a client over a minor revision, nearly called Jenna, then remembered she thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. I pulled up the bedroom footage again, watched the black screen, watched the note appear. I had proof now. Proof that something impossible had happened. Proof that at 2:47 a.m., for exactly 4 minutes, something had entered my room, or materialized there, and left a note. Or proof that I'd gotten up, written the note myself, and somehow edited the footage to hide it. Or proof that I'd had a dissociative episode, written the note, and my brain had convinced me the camera had glitched to protect me from the truth of what I'd done. I had proof. Proof that I couldn't trust anything. Not my cameras, not my memories, not my own mind. The knife stayed under my pillow. The cameras kept recording, and I kept watching, waiting for something to happen that would tell me definitively whether I was being haunted or going insane. I wasn't sure which answer I was hoping for anymore. Both felt equally terrifying. Both felt equally possible. I just needed to know which nightmare I was living in. The private investigator's office smelled like old coffee and cheaper cologne. I'd found him online at 2 a.m. during one of my increasingly frequent not sleeping, just existing in a state of wired panic sessions. Gerald Hoffner, 30 years in forensic document analysis, worked with law enforcement, had a website that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2003. Perfect. I'd brought 6 notes in a Ziploc bag, handling them like evidence because that's what they were, weren't they? Evidence of something. Hoffner was 60-ish, with reading glasses on a chain and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every possible permutation of human weirdness. He laid the notes out on his desk with gloved hands, pulled out a magnifying glass and something that looked like a small UV light. I sat across from him, my knee bouncing, trying not to look as desperate as I felt. After 15 minutes of silence, broken only by occasional hmms, he looked up. "This is definitely the same hand across all 6 samples," he said. "Consistent pressure, consistent letter formation, consistent stylistic quirks. See here." He pointed to the capital M in Mom. The way the first stroke curves slightly inward. That's habitual. Hard to fake. "So, someone's forging my mother's handwriting. Or," he said carefully, "this is your mother's handwriting. She's dead. I understand that." He pushed his glasses up. "But the handwriting is authentic. However," he held up one of the notes to the light, "the ink is fresh. I'd say these were written within the last month, possibly the last 2 weeks." My chest tightened. "So, someone is forging it." That's one explanation. And it would have to be someone very, very good. We're talking professional level forgery. He set the note down. Or what? Or someone is using authentic samples, pre-written notes, signed cards, blank stationery your mother wrote on before she died. He leaned back. Did your mother keep journals? Any kind of signature books? Greeting cards she'd pre-sign? The memory hit me like cold water. It was about 6 months before she died. A good day, or what passed for good days by then. Mom was in the living room, this living room, the one I now worked in, with a stack of greeting cards and stationery spread across the coffee table. "What are you doing?" I'd asked. "Pre-signing," she'd said simply, her hand moving across card after card. "The doctor said my fine motor control will go eventually, so I'm signing things now, just in case I forget how to write." Just in case I forget how to write. She'd said it so matter-of-factly, like she was talking about forgetting someone's name at a party, not losing the ability to write her own. I'd helped her. We'd spent 2 hours going through boxes of cards and stationery she'd accumulated over the years. Birthday cards, thank you notes, blank greeting cards with watercolor flowers. She signed the bottom of each one with her full name, Love Mom, or just Mom. "These will last me," she'd said, stacking them neatly. "You can send them for me when I can't anymore." After she died, I'd packed them away. Couldn't bear to look at them. Couldn't bear to throw them away. They went into boxes in the basement with everything else I wasn't ready to deal with. "Ms. Morrison?" I blinked. Hoffner was watching me with professional concern. "She did," I said hoarsely. "Pre-signed cards, stationery. She did that when she got sick. I boxed them up after she died. They're in my basement." Hoffner nodded slowly. "Then that's likely your answer. Someone found those pre-signed items and has been using them." "But who would—" I stopped. "Someone's been in my house." "It would appear so. A physical explanation. Real, tangible. Not ghosts, not psychosis. Someone had found my mother's pre-signed cards and was using them to gaslight me. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt violated in a way I didn't have words for. "Did you give anyone access to your home?" Hoffner asked. "During your mother's illness? After she passed?" "Family helped during the final months. My brother, his wife, some hospice nurses." My mind was racing. But that was 3 years ago. "Do any of them still have keys?" I didn't know. I'd never changed the locks. Why would I? It was my house. My mother's house. Who would— "I need to go," I said, standing abruptly. Hoffner looked startled. "I can do more analysis if you need—" "No, thank you. This is, I grabbed the Ziploc bag. "This is exactly what I needed." I drove home 15 miles over the speed limit, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Someone had been in my house. Someone who knew about the pre-signed cards. Someone who'd been watching me closely enough to know when I needed comfort, what to say, when I was at my most vulnerable. Someone from my family. The thought made my skin crawl and my chest tighten with something that felt like relief and rage all mixed together. I pulled into my driveway, barely remembering to turn off the car, unlocked the front door, went straight for the basement. The stairs creaked under my feet. I yanked the light cord. Weak yellow light spilled across boxes and covered furniture, and 3 years of accumulated grief I'd been avoiding. I found the area where I'd stacked Mom's things, photo albums, her favorite blanket, the good china she never used, and there, where I'd left them, should have been 3 boxes labeled Mom, Cards and Stationery in my handwriting. I stared at the empty space. The boxes were gone. All 3 of them. Like they'd never been there at all. I went home to look for those boxes. They were gone. Diane answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized cardigan, her face doing that instant shift from relaxed to concerned that people do when unexpected visitors show up at 8 p.m. "Claire? Oh my God, are you okay? You sounded so upset on the phone. Can I come in?" Of course. She stepped aside, ushering me into the entryway. The house smelled like vanilla candles and something cooking. Normal, domestic, safe. I wanted to scream. "Mark's at a work thing," Diane said, closing the door. "Can I get you some tea? Wine?" Why have you been breaking into my house?" The words came out flat, clinical, like I was asking about the weather. Diane froze. Her hand was still on the door handle. "What?" "The notes. Mom's pre-signed stationery. You took the boxes from my basement and you've been using them to leave notes around my house." I kept my voice level, controlled. "You have a key. You know my routines. You've been coming in when I'm out and leaving them where I'll find them. Claire, I don't know what you're—" "Don't." I took a step forward. I went to a handwriting expert. I checked the camera footage. "I know it's you, Diane. I just need to know why." Something crumpled in her face. For a moment, I thought she'd keep denying it, keep performing innocence. But then her eyes filled with tears and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God, Claire, I'm so sorry." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd known. But hearing her admit it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why would you do that to me?" Diane was crying now, actual tears streaming down her face. "Because you were dying, Claire, not physically, but you were disappearing. After your mom passed, you just shut down. You stopped returning calls, stopped coming to family dinners. When I'd text to check on you, you'd send back these one-word responses like you were on autopilot. So you decided to gaslight me?" "No, God, no, I was trying to help." She moved into the living room, collapsed onto the couch like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. I thought if you felt like your mom was still watching over you, still caring about you, you'd heal. You'd feel less alone." I stood in the doorway, my hands shaking. "You violated my home, Diane." I know. But you were scaring us, Claire. You were scaring me. I kept thinking about you in that house, all alone, surrounded by her things, and She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I wanted you to feel loved." By lying to me? By making me think I was losing my mind? I didn't think you'd react this way. I thought the notes would be comforting, like little reminders that she was still with you in spirit. Diane's voice was pleading now. "And they were helping, weren't they? You seem better, more engaged. I saw it." The worst part was she wasn't entirely wrong. The notes had helped. In some sick, twisted way, they'd pulled me out of the fog I'd been living in. They'd made me feel seen, cared for, less alone in that empty house. But they'd also made me question my sanity, made me document my own life like evidence, made me sleep with a knife under my pillow. "How did you do it?" I asked. "The cameras." Diane wiped her eyes. "Mark set up your system. He has admin access. I used his login to check when you were home, and I could pause the recordings just for a few minutes, long enough to—" "Does he know?" "No." The word came out sharp, desperate. "God, no, he has no idea. He'd kill me if he knew. Claire, please, you can't tell him." "You used his credentials to hack my security system. I know how it sounds. Do you?" I was shaking now, my whole body vibrating with rage and confusion and something else I couldn't name. "Do you have any idea what the last 2 weeks have been like for me? I thought I was having a psychotic break, Diane. I thought I was writing these notes myself and not remembering. I was reviewing hours of footage, checking my locks obsessively, not sleeping." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to scare you. I just wanted to help." By manipulating me? By exploiting my grief? "I was worried about you." Her voice rose, defensive now. "You wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't get help. You were living in that house like it was a shrine to someone who doesn't exist anymore. Your mom wasn't those last 2 years, Claire. She was cruel. She was mean. She wasn't her. And you've been carrying that around like this weight, punishing yourself for being relieved when she died, and She stopped. "I thought if you remembered who she was before, the mom who left you, encouraging notes and took care of you, maybe you could forgive yourself." The words hit too close, too accurate. How did she know about the relief? Had I said something during one of those fog-heavy days after the funeral? Had she seen it on my face? "When did you leave the last note?" I asked quietly. 2 days ago. The one about—" She hesitated. "The one about being where you need to be. You'd been talking about leaving, selling the house, moving somewhere new, and you thought you'd convince me to stay. I thought you'd regret it if you ran away. That house is all you have left of her, the real her. I stared at this woman I'd known for 6 years, who'd married my brother, who'd helped care for my mother, who'd spent the last 3 weeks breaking into my house to play guardian angel with my dead mother's handwriting. I didn't know if I was horrified or heartbroken, maybe both. "Give me your key," I said. "Claire, now." Diane got up, moved to the kitchen, came back with a key on a simple ring. She held it out like an offering. I took it. "I need you to send me Mark's login for the camera system tonight, and then I need you to never, ever come to my house again. Do you understand?" "Claire, please, I was just trying to—" "I know." My voice broke. "I know you were trying to help, and that's what makes this so messed up, Diane, because the notes did help. I did feel less alone, but it was all a lie. Every single one of them was you manipulating me into feeling something that wasn't real. Your mom's love for you was real, but these weren't from her. They were from you, and you violated my home and my grief and my mind to make yourself feel like a good person." Diane flinched like I'd slapped her. I turned toward the door. "Are you going to tell Mark?" she asked in a small voice. I stopped, looked back. She looked smaller somehow, crumpled. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know anything right now except that I need you to stay away from me." I drove home in silence. Changed the locks at 10 p.m. using a kit from the hardware store and a YouTube tutorial. Sent Mark a text asking for the admin credentials, claiming I wanted to review my security settings. He sent them within 5 minutes. I changed all the passwords. Then I sat on my couch in the dark and tried to figure out what I felt. Betrayal, obviously. Rage, yes, but also something else. Something I didn't want to admit. Gratitude. Because for 2 weeks I'd felt cared for, watched over, less alone. And now I was back to being just alone. I told Diane to stop. I changed the locks. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks passed. I changed my routines. Started leaving the house more. Grocery shopping at different times, different stores. Took walks around the neighborhood just to prove I could. Jenna had been staying over on weekends, and we'd finally really talked about everything. The notes, Diane, the cameras, how close I'd come to completely unraveling. "You should have told me sooner," she'd said, but without judgment, just sadness. I know. I'd also started therapy again. Dr. Chen didn't say, "I told you so," but I could feel it hovering in the air between us during our first session back. We talked about boundaries, about isolation, about the difference between grief and self-punishment. "You've been living in a mausoleum," she'd said gently, "not a home." She was right. So I started making changes, small ones. I moved some of Mom's things into storage. Not all of them, I wasn't ready for that, but enough that the house started feeling less like a shrine and more like a space I actually inhabited. The dining room table became my workspace instead of the sad little desk in the corner. I bought new throw pillows, hung some of my own artwork on the walls, designs I'd done for clients but never bothered to print for myself. And I'd been sleeping, actually sleeping, 6, sometimes 7 hours a night. No knife under the pillow, no obsessive lock checking, just sleep. It felt like emerging from underwater. It was a Thursday afternoon when I found the last note. I'd been working at the dining room table, lost in a redesign for a nonprofit's logo, when I stood up to stretch. My back was killing me from sitting too long. I rolled my shoulders, looked around the room, and my eyes landed on Mom's chair. The green velvet armchair by the window. Her spot. Where she'd sit every morning with her coffee and do the crossword puzzle. Where she'd been sitting the day she looked at me and asked, "Who are you?" for the first time. I hadn't sat in it once since she died, but Dr. Chen's voice was in my head. "You're allowed to take up space in your own home, Claire." So I walked over and sat down. The chair still smelled faintly like her perfume. Or maybe I was imagining that. 3 years was a long time for a scent to linger. I leaned back, looked out the window at the street, and tried to imagine what it had been like for her, sitting here every morning, watching the neighborhood wake up, before the disease took everything. That's when I saw it. A yellow Post-it note stuck to the arm of the chair where my hand was resting. My entire body went cold. No, not again. Not after I'd changed the locks. Not after Diane had confessed. Not after 2 weeks of finally feeling like I was getting my life back. My hands shook as I peeled it off. You didn't need me to write these. You already know what I'd say. Mom. I stared at the note. The handwriting was wrong. Not Mom's looping cursive. Not Diane's careful forgery. It was mine. My handwriting. My nervous, slightly cramped letters. The way I always wrote when I was anxious, pressing too hard with the pen. I looked around the room like I'd catch myself in the act. But there was no one. Just me and the afternoon light and this note in my own handwriting that I had absolutely no memory of writing. I called Diane. She answered on the second ring, her voice wary. Claire? Did you come back? Did you leave another note? What? No, I swear to God, Claire, I haven't been near your house. You changed the locks. I don't even... You could have made a copy of the key before you gave it back. I didn't. I swear. What's going on? I hung up, checked the camera footage, reviewed the last 3 days. Nothing. No one had entered. The cameras showed me leaving for therapy, coming back with groceries, working at my dining room table. I watched myself get up from the table, stretch, walk toward the chair. At 2:47 p.m., that number again, like the universe had a sick sense of humor, I sat down in Mom's chair, and then I just sat there for 4 minutes, staring at nothing, perfectly still. Then I stood up and walked back to the table, sat down, kept working like nothing had happened. But when I zoomed in on the footage, frame by frame, I could see it. At 2:49 p.m., while I sat motionless in that chair, my right hand moved, just slightly, like I was writing something. But there was no pen visible, no Post-it in my hand. The camera angle didn't capture the arm of the chair. I sat on my couch with the note in my hand until the sun went down. I could call Dr. Chen. Tell her I'd had a dissociative episode, that I'd written a note to myself in my mother's voice and couldn't remember doing it. That despite all the progress I'd made, I was still fractured enough to black out and perform little rituals of self-comfort. She'd probably increase our sessions to twice a week, maybe suggest medication. Definitely want to dig into what it meant that I'd chosen that message. You didn't need me to write these. Or I could call Diane back, accuse her of lying, of finding some way back into my house despite the new locks, of orchestrating one final mind game. Or I could accept that I might never know the truth. Maybe Diane had left one last note, couldn't help herself, found some way in and out that my cameras didn't catch. Maybe I had written it during some fugue state, my brain's way of giving me permission to stop waiting for my mother's approval, even the fake, forged version Diane had manufactured. Or maybe, and this was the thought that made my chest tight and my eyes burn, maybe I'd written it because I'd finally internalized what Mom would have actually wanted to say. Not the disease-ravaged version who forgot my name, not Diane's well-intentioned but manipulative fantasy, but the real her, the one who'd loved me, who'd trusted me to know what she'd say even when she couldn't say it anymore. You didn't need me to write these. You already know what I'd say. I thought about all the notes I'd found, the encouragement, the gentle reminders to take care of myself, the reassurance that I was doing okay, things Mom would have said, but also things I would say to someone I loved who was drowning. Maybe that was the point. I kept that note, not in a Ziploc bag like evidence, not hidden in a shoebox under my bed. I put it on the fridge, right at eye level, where I'd see it every morning. Jenna saw it the next time she came over. "New note?" she asked carefully. "Last one," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "Claire, did you write that?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. Probably. Does it matter?" "I think it matters if I'm not having a breakdown." I met her eyes. "I think I'm finally having a breakthrough. I spent 3 years waiting for my mom to come back and tell me it was okay, that I felt relieved when she died, that I did my best, that I'm allowed to move on. And I don't need her ghost to tell me that, or Diane's forgeries, or notes I may or may not have written to myself. I touched the post-it gently. I already know what she'd say. I've always known. Jenna hugged me. I'm proud of you. Thanks. That's exactly what the note would have said. She laughed. I did too. I still live in the house, Mom's house, but also my house now. I moved more furniture around, painted the kitchen, finally went through those boxes in the basement, slowly, carefully, but I did it. I found albums from before the Alzheimer's. I kept those. The rest I donated or threw away. I sit in the green velvet chair sometimes. It's a good chair, good light for reading. The note's still on my fridge. I look at it every morning when I make coffee. Some days I think Diane left it. One last manipulation, one last attempt to control the narrative of my grief. Some days I think I wrote it myself during a moment I can't remember, my brain's way of protecting me while I learn to protect myself. And some days, most days now, I think it doesn't matter who wrote it. What matters is that it's true. I didn't need someone else to write these notes. Not Diane. Not even the version of Mom I'd been desperately trying to resurrect through sheer force of guilt and magical thinking. I already knew what she'd say, what she'd want to say if the disease hadn't stolen her words and her memory and those last years we should have had. You're doing better than you think. I'm proud of you. You're exactly where you need to be. I know that now. I kept that one note, not because I believe in ghosts, not because I think my mother's spirit is watching over me from some cosmic vantage point, not even because I'm holding on to some desperate hope that the notes were real and magic exists and love transcends death. I kept it because maybe, after 3 years of punishing myself, I was finally ready to hear from the one person who'd been silent this whole time, me. Maybe I was always the one I needed to hear from. The notes stopped after that. I didn't need them anymore. I want to know what you think. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you think about your own ghosts, the ones you carry or the ones you've become, leave a dove in the comments. No explanation needed. Just let me know you were here. Because grief is lonely, but it doesn't have to be. New stories every week. Subscribe if you want more of this, the kind of stories that don't let you go even after they're over. I'll see you in the next one, or maybe you'll see me first.